even a year, 6 months to a year in, I was like, oh my goodness, what is this? Is this really what I want to do? But you don't throw in the towel. You keep going. You find a way to be successful.
In today's world, that is such great advice, right? Because a lot of young people don't recognize that that is the way you get there.
You are going to go through so much adversity, and you cannot let it bring you down.
I'm delighted to be joined by Alexis Collins of NRF, who is currently the CIO. And we're going to hear from Alexis today on her journey into a CIO role within one of the world's largest law firms. So it should be really exciting to hear about this. So Alexis, welcome to the pod.
Thank you so much.
It's really great to be here with you. And look, in our preparation for this conversation, one of the things that became abundantly clear is you are someone that has taken risks through their career and has kind of thrown themselves into the unknown, right? So the question I really wanted to start with was, if you think back all the way to the start of your career, where did you expect that you were going to be at this point? Were you aiming to be in the C-suite?
You know, I will say that when I started my career, I honestly just was naive and did not think ahead to where I thought I was going to be. And I think I told you as well, I definitely did not think I was going to end up in technology. So, you know, I studied economics in university, and I thought I would go into investment banking or finance. So that's really where I kind of saw myself, maybe as a managing director at a big bank, if I was really kind of dreaming. Some of the people that I interviewed with here in Houston. But I ended up going into consulting, and at that time, all the big 5 consulting firms were hiring to staff these large SAP projects, because you had the oil companies, the service companies, the airlines, the big hospitals. They were all implementing SAP, and they could not find the talent fast enough. So they were just hiring people out of school, sending them out to boot camp, and sending them off to staff these projects. And if I had been told that was what I was going to be doing after they hired me, I probably would have turned down that job. And it would have been the biggest mistake probably of my life.
Right.
Because after some bumps at the beginning, I ended up really realizing, oh yeah, this like I was meant to do this. And I love this sport, if you will, sport of technology and supporting technology.
There's something in that though, right? Because it's about being opportunistic and I guess following your nose a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I guess I think also there's the bit, so I have a daughter who's in university, and she's trying to find her way, and she thinks she's settled on a major, and she's starting to get overwhelmed in terms of all the opportunities and saying, Mom, all these other people know exactly what they want to do, and I feel like I'm behind. She's only a second year. And I think my experience shows that, I didn't know what I was going to be doing, honestly. And I did not want to get into IT. To be quite honest, like I really thought finance was going to be where I was, that's where I wanted to be. And so if I had, when I had that first taste of disappointment in my first assignment it was Anderson Consulting at the time, it would have been a huge mistake to have left. So I think there's also an element of trust the process, get the experience, learn, take the opportunity to learn what's in front of you, because that's going to benefit you down the road. You're going to take something, even if you realize, gosh, I really hate this, and this is not where I want to be. Well, you still will have learned something. Right. You will have realized that. So, okay, you can scratch that off the list. But you will have gleaned some knowledge and experience that will carry you forward into the next role.
100%. And I believe that not enough people think like that, right? Because even if you think back to your university degree, actually the foundational learning that you had from that degree has probably helped you in some aspects of your career
absolutely.
today, right? And I think some people look at it and go, well, I studied economics, but I now work in IT. They're two completely different things. I would argue that actually one leads to another.
I mean, actually, in my role now, and my team knows I am absolutely brutal about evaluating business cases.
Right.
And that is like the first, anytime someone comes to me, we don't talk about, let's do the next shiny object and let's like get all stars in our eyes because we saw this vendor demonstration. It's what is the business opportunity? What is the value proposition? What are we going to be delivering to the firm? Working hard to quantify that. A lot of people struggle to quantify value, but at the end of the day, that's the whole reason you're doing these projects, right? Is because you believe there's going to be value at the end. So,
and we're jumping straight in here, right?
Yeah, we are.
That mindset. Have you found, when you've looked across your peer group at various points through your career, have you found that that is unique and therefore that's enabled you to accelerate?
It's odd to me to think of it as being unique because to me it's so fundamental. But I will say, like, for example, when I first got the role at NRF and I was asking my team about these in-flight projects and what's the business case, and they were like, we don't know what you're talking about. Projects don't come to us until they're already approved, and we've just been told to go do it. And I do think that's very telling of the expectation of IT as well, in that kind of legacy environment, I will say legacy thinking, where, you're just told go do something. Essentially, then there's not the ownership, right, from the IT side to really drive something forward. Well, I was told to do this. It's, it wasn't my call. I don't really know what the value is. It's not really a good way to start a project.
It's such an interesting point, though, isn't it? Because you can see that kind of that thinking that's been developed early from your university degree, probably having that real interest in economics and business, and then transitioning that into a career in IT. It is different, I suppose, to a lot of trajectories that you see within traditional technology careers. But it seems like it's made you stand out, which is a cool thing.
At the end of the day, we're all here to support the business.
Right.
So you have to understand the business drivers.
And then, so your experience within consulting, how much of that do you think still is carried through to your work today?
Oh, a huge amount. Actually, so I will say the two primary companies that I spent the longest part of my career in, being onboarded with Anderson Consulting, now Accenture, I didn't appreciate it at the time, but the training that you start with, the onboarding training, is amazing. And that really carried through. Even some of the principles that I learned on day one, week one, I still carry that through. And I think other people may have taken that for granted, but then I compare to people who didn't have that experience, who started at, even if I just say a law firm, just because we don't have the resources, right? So you hire someone in business services, in IT, I might hire, I don't know, 1 or 2 entry-level people a year, maybe. And they're learning on the job, right? And it's very tailored. So the education that I got from Accenture to start my career has carried me through. So I definitely, those consulting firms really do a great job. And then with Halliburton, the leadership experience and training that I got, that's the other thing. We really, they do a great job identifying the next level of leaders, and at all levels, from like line 1 all the way up to executive. And they have training at every level. And they also very thoughtfully move you through the ranks and rotate you around. So you also get that breadth of experience. And so those two experiences were really amazing and set me up well.
Yeah, so thinking about your kind of formative years of your career or your earlier career, there was the element of getting into an environment where there was a huge amount of demand in SAP. Absolutely. And then also being in organizations where there's a huge emphasis on learning and development, which, that's a great way to start your career, right? But thinking about right now, where are those areas where you see a huge demand and a lack of supply from a talent perspective? Is there anything specific that jumps out to you?
Well, I mean, everyone is talking about AI. Everyone is talking about data. I think there needs to be more focus on solving a business problem. So focusing on a business problem and then looking at, okay, how does technology play a role? So I think it's very fundamental. It's what I'm challenged with, and I think when I talk to my peer group, is people come to them and they say, how can I leverage AI? I want to leverage AI, or I want to do something with data. And it's like, well, let's take a step back. Let's say you're talking to finance. Who are the people in your organization that can tell us where the pain points are and where they could, if they had this data or they could pull it all together and they could get it on at this time frame, who can help us do that? Who can tell us where that value is? Because it's very much, I think it's this like thought about, well, we're just going to outsource this sort of to IT. Like IT, go solve us a problem. And it's very difficult. Because we need the business expertise, but at the end of the day, we're there to solve a challenge. We're not there to just throw some technology at it. So we need to work through the business opportunities.
So it's the ability to articulate the challenge.
Yeah.
And that's effectively a human skill set, right?
Yes,
For
absolutely.
now, at least. It's almost that ability to kind of to draw the dots, right? Spot opportunities.
And I think the business, I guess the business is they feel very stretched. So they're also being challenged. Like, hey, we hear that AI is out there and can do a lot of this stuff that we're spending time on. We're pulling together manually, the reporting, the research, the drafting, those kinds of things. So they also are stretched in the sense that they don't feel they have the luxury of time to be able to work with us on these projects. So I guess I would say to leadership, it's not just the technology. We need that domain expertise, and we need the business to partner with us. And so they need the space and time to be able to do that.
Of course. And so being a industry executive, sitting in technology, understanding that, how does that make you feel about where we are right now?
The opportunity is there, obviously. I do feel people are, just overarchingly, it's almost like the expectation of leadership, and part of it is they feel stretched too, because they're hearing about what our peers are doing, and this stuff is great, and there's all these opportunities, and where are we? We need to be doing this, that, and the other thing. They don't realize like we have to have the space and time, and we need to be very thoughtful about the opportunity and planning it out and prioritization, right? Like, let's go for some low-hanging fruit. Where can we show value quickly, right? Where can we prove out the technology but also deliver value at the same time?
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? I think that so much of it is a marketing hype.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
When in reality, it is all about internally, what are the challenges we're trying to solve for? Are we solving for them in the right way?
Absolutely.
Have we got the investment to do that, et cetera?
Absolutely.
But look, okay, so you look back at your career, right? So you've gone into consulting and then you've gone into Halliburton. Mm-hmm. Now, actually, we know, as we've just discussed, that both of those opportunities gave you fantastic access to learning and development. So in reality, in hindsight, do you think they were kind of intentional moves into organizations that were offering those learning opportunities, or was that just fortunate?
I think in some ways I was just very fortunate. I had heard, anecdotally that, consulting is a great opportunity and that there would be some good training, but I really did not know what I was getting into. Like, if you had told me I was going to be learning SAP and off at a client coding, I would have probably gone running from that job, honestly. But again, it was, in time, again, I feel like incredibly fortunate that I did end up there, even though that's not, again, even a year, 6 months to a year in, I was like, oh my goodness, what is this? Is this really what I want to do? Right.
And why is that? Why was your mindset towards the kind of the IT role like that at that point, do you think?
I think part of it was just the expectation. Like I had, glamorized kind of, being in finance. And then even when I accepted the consulting role, right, you don't really know what consulting is. Like if I had gone on a shadowing exercise or something, or I mean, even if I had gotten a different assignment, because there were different assignments even within Accenture at that time. But it was very different than what I expected. I did not expect to be, coding basically. But the crazy thing is, then I learned to love it. Yeah. So it took a while, and it took getting on some like meaty, longer term projects where I got integrated with a team. That's when I really started. I was like, oh, this is what this can be. Okay, this is really cool.
Right. Yeah, you mentioned you called it a sport earlier, right?
Yeah,
the sport of technology. Now I know you're quite a sporty person, just kind of, naturally. Do you think that you would have made any career into a kind of sport?
I loved playing volleyball, and beach volleyball was just getting, taking off. Yeah. And I was like, oh gosh, I would love that. Of course, I'm very short, so I would have been a setter. Oh yeah. I mean, of course, just like I'm, a lot of people dream of being a professional athlete, and then you kind of come crashing down. But I did have the great opportunity of, running track and cross country for a Division I university, which again, I'm very fortunate. My daughter is having the same opportunity. And I just tell her, like, these are the best years of your life. You're going to take away so many learnings here. The fact that, time management, the fact that, you'd have to be on the bus or on the plane or even out on the track, like in between events with your books out, studying. That's stuff you're going to carry through into your professional career.
For sure. And it's interesting. So we've had so much success hiring graduates who come from a sporting background. And I think also doing this podcast, meeting executives, it's fascinating to see the amount of executives that either prioritize sport in their lifestyle or have come from a sporting background and have played at a certain level. And I think the two things go hand in hand, right? Because
absolutely,
like you say, the skills that you develop in sport, you can then carry through into your career. It's just interesting that you talked about your career being a sport, and you've almost you've integrated the two things completely, right?
Well, absolutely. If you think about the differing roles and skill sets that it takes to deliver a project, right? So you have the project manager who could be the quarterback or the captain of the football team, or you have the change manager, the UX designer, you have obviously the developer, you have the training. Like all of those roles have to come together, and they have to work together. And and someone could be having a bad day, or we could be running late on a development sprint and other people jump in. I do think, back to the sporting background, one of the things that it really taught me is you are going to go through so much adversity, and you cannot let it bring you down. And I think having those experiences early on, the crushing defeats. I remember doing very poorly and just being so disappointed. But you don't throw in the towel. You keep going. You find a way to be successful. And I do think that's something that happens, all the time in IT projects, right? You purchase a vendor solution that looked great in your POC environment, and now all of a sudden it doesn't play well with, all the other enterprise applications you have. And how are you going to work through that? And running behind on something, how can you catch up? I just think there's a lot of good lessons there.
It's an individual mindset though, right? And then you obviously that radiates out into the team around you. But you've built a culture where teamwork is a priority. So realistically, how do you do that in a professional environment?
Again, you make working as a team a priority, a goal. So I have 3 core values that I learned from one of my early bosses and mentors: accountability, collaboration, and trust. So accountability, I'm sure we'll talk about that later, but the collaboration aspect is that I tell my team, it's like we are one IT. So we're one organization. I don't want anybody saying, if someone comes to you for help, I don't want you to say, I mean, that may not be your wheelhouse, but I don't want you to say, that's not my area, you need to call John. I want them to say, okay, let me help you. I know who can help you. Let me put you in touch. Just the whole, that we are one team. We don't throw each other under the bus. We don't work in silos. We all have a unique role to play, and we all add to the whole.
Yeah. And do you have to then select people for your team based on that mindset?
Absolutely.
Because you can't teach it as easily, right?
That's true. I mean, I will say, on the whole, and maybe it is just because, I come in and set expectations, and in some cases, it's like, okay, well, she's the boss, I've got to go along. But there have been times where we've seen that someone is not coming along and playing ball. And yeah, absolutely. In those rare cases, you have to make a hard decision, because you can't let basically one person's negative attitude essentially pull down the whole team and bring morale down. Especially if this person is in a management role. That is something that just can't happen.
Yes, because then actually the culture that you're trying to create stops at that level, right? And it doesn't permeate down.
Right.
Yeah, we've seen that as well. And it's never easy, right? Because ultimately it's one person has a view in one way, and actually it doesn't align to everyone else's view, and that's no one's right or wrong there necessarily. It's just the two things don't fit, right?
Right.
And you have to make that call early.
Yeah.
Which is challenging.
It is. No, it is. It's never fun, but at the end of the day, that's what you're in leadership and management for. You're there to make the hard calls.
Yeah. So you've got accountability, collaboration. So from an accountability standpoint, how do you develop that level of kind of ownership within your organization?
It starts with the language people use. So one of the things I've noticed is people who are natural and they take accountability, they're the first person to say, I own this, right? And especially, like, for example, if they're in a manager role, they understand that they are accountable for their entire team's deliverables. So if I see a manager that takes responsibility for, let's say, something that went wrong, because things go wrong, right? And I really appreciate, I have one manager that works for me. She's amazing at this. Something goes wrong, she will immediately come, tell me what happened. She will own it. Here's how we're going to fix it. She does not, it's not necessarily her personally, hands on keyboard, that made a mistake, but she owns it. She owns the process. She owns what's happening within her team, and she will talk about fixing it. By contrast, if you have somebody who you ask a question, they're like, no, I don't know about this, ask so-and-so, or I wasn't here when that decision was made. It's those types of language, or I don't know why I'm doing this, so-and-so asked me to, and that's why.
Yeah.
Right?
It's not helpful.
Not helpful.
And so in the former example, so what do you get out of that as the leader in that scenario where someone's taking that ownership? What do you get?
Well, first of all, I so appreciate that. That stops me from having to say, what's really frustrating is when people don't take ownership and they don't come to you with a solution, and you feel so frustrated, like, okay, but this was a big deal. It's like you have to go, this was a big deal, and how are we going to fix it in the future? When someone comes to you and says, before you hear it from anybody else, I want you to know this thing happened. It was a miss on my team. We onboarded somebody, they didn't get the right training. I realize where that miss is. We're going to fix that going forward. Here's how we're going to change the process such that we can catch this early next time. Like, that is just like, what can you say? It's like, well, wow, great job. That's exactly what we're paying you for, right? To manage this team. And that's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's such an easy thing to do,
of course.
Too. I mean, but some people just don't do that.
Why not?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. They're scared. They want to hide behind. Like, so So on the flip side, you could think about the exact same thing happening in the sequence of events, that someone tries to hide it, doesn't come forward and say it. Then I find out from my boss or a partner at the firm, or, something that, oh, did you hear that this happened? No. And then I have to go chase the person down. And then it's, oh, well, yeah, so-and-so on my team made a mistake. And it's just not. So it's almost like it's ingrained in people, right? And so, but then, again, okay, so take a step back. Maybe this person, didn't learn this early in their career. So let me coach how I would appreciate this to be handled in future. And sometimes it's as simple as that. Like, take ownership. It reflects so well on you. Come to the table with a solution, how we're going to avoid this next time, et cetera.
Yeah.
But it's amazing how many people will not do that. And then it just compounds the problem. That's the other thing. It's like, it just makes it so much worse.
Yeah. Yeah, again, it's the benefit of hindsight though, right? Because I guess it's easier to hide something in the moment than it is to be really open and talk about it in that moment, even though actually down the line, the former will have 10 times the impact than just owning it and dealing with it. Problem shared is a problem halved, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But we see this time and time again, both with working with our clients, but also, running a team, running a business. You get these things that happen, right? And it's about creating that culture where people feel like they have the security and
absolutely,
the ability to have those difficult conversations early, right?
Right, absolutely. I mean, what am I going to do when someone comes to me and says, "Yeah, we made a mistake. It was the first time. We're going to correct it." Like, the right thing wouldn't be, "Oh, I'm going to." You're on probation, or, your job is at stake, or, that's not the right way to handle that, right?
No. And then you would imagine that the rest of the team see that happen where, someone's approached you, they've said, look, this is the issue. This is what I'm going to do about it. This is why it's gone wrong in the first instance. They see your reaction to that, which is ultimately a positive one. And that should then have a positive future impact on how people deal with those situations as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, the evidence is there. And I believe that creating a culture is all about creating evidence and really demonstrating what you want the culture to be as the leader, right?
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true.
It's easy to say and hard to do, though.
Yeah.
I think. But okay, so you've got accountability, you've got collaboration. Was there anything else you took from the mentor? Okay.
Trust. So meaning, I want my team to be able to trust me. So I'm not going to tell you a story. I'm not going to hide things. Obviously, there are things in management. A lot of times, you will learn things and maybe not be able to share, but I'm going to be as open and transparent as I can. And at the same time, I trust all of you. I trust you to do your job, do things appropriately, take accountability, collaborate, understand that at the end of the day, we are a service organization. We're providing a service to the firm. We need to deliver value. And so again, I trust you until there's evidence to the contrary, right?
I imagine that gets tested though, right?
Oh yeah, it can be, absolutely. I mean, we've talked about one of the situations just here. It's if you don't come to me with something, if I can't trust you to come tell me when something has gone wrong, right? That's a trust issue. And likewise, I can see if my team didn't trust me, right, on how I was going to respond on something, I could see there being a challenge there. So it does go both ways, from the leader down to the team, and but also you also have to trust your peers, and you as a member of a team delivering a project, right? And you have all the different roles. You have to trust that the developer is going to do what they're supposed to be doing. And, we talk about, when someone needs help, stepping in. But there's also, there's times when you'll see maybe a project manager trying to micromanage. It's like, no, you need to trust that person that they're going to get it done. We've set a schedule, right? We should have early warning signs if things aren't going right, but you've got to let that team do their work.
Yeah, and sometimes that can come from a positive place, from what I see.
Absolutely.
Right? Sometimes it can come from a place of someone almost wanting to help or support,
Right.
but as a result, potentially overstepping and therefore not allowing the next person to take on that accountability or trusting them to do that, which is a difficult one to deal with, I find, because it comes from a good place.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a balance, right? It's a huge balance, but as long as it comes from a good place, and you can see that it's coming from a good place,
you're in the right zone.
You're good.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see that completely. Okay, cool. So look, I think that it's a really interesting kind of viewpoint that we've got now of your early career, right? But if I look at it from sitting here today, you've made it into the C-suite, you've started as a developer. That's quite a unique journey. And we've talked about some of the aspects that have enabled you to get there. But what was the biggest challenge on that journey? When you think about it holistically through your career, what was the biggest challenging period, do you think?
Yeah. So I do really value that. And I think my team does, because they can see that I was there. I was in the trenches. So in 10 years, about 5, I was an individual contributor, developer, and then I moved into a dev lead role. So 10 years total of hands-on development and managing a team through deliveries. And so I was there. I know what it's like. I know where the challenges are when things are running late, when things don't go as expected. When things are more challenging than you expect. But yeah, I guess one of the more challenging times in my career was after I had left that development role. I was in my first true manager role. I was managing a team. This was very different. So then now I was managing a team of individuals who supported a portfolio of applications across marketing, so our external website, corporate affairs, which was the intranet mainly, and then we had an IT suite of tools. For example, ServiceNow. That wasn't what we had at the time, but it was that type of ticketing and workflow system. At the same time, I was challenged. I had my children were very little. I think they were 2 and 5 at this stage. My husband was working a very high pressure, high stress job as an investment banker. So he was traveling and working long hours. It was, of course, because I'm the mother, it was assumed that I'm going to take primary responsibility, primary caregiver for the kids. And there was a lot of pressure at that time. And it was challenging. That was probably the biggest challenge that I faced in my career. And around that same time, actually, I was then promoted to senior manager. I went to work for a highly respected woman in the organization who kind of had mentored me. I had known her for a while. And she was actually let go almost as soon as I got into the role. So that was another huge blow in this whole, I move into a new role that was completely in left field. At this point, the role was essentially I was responsible for all IT delivery for several of the largest product lines at Halliburton. So I essentially sat within IT at this point because my boss was I was reporting directly to our global CIO and matrix report to the VPs of those product lines. And I had lost a mentor. I was in a new role, had really no one there to kind of help guide. And then meanwhile, all this stuff at home. So it was hugely, hugely challenging at that point.
How did you get through it?
Well, I asked for help on the home front. So we brought in some additional help on the home front that gave me a little space to breathe. So I was able to kind of organize to work late a couple of days. And I had someone who could come in and make dinner for the kids, which was great. So that when I came home, there wasn't this frenetic, running around, I'm starving, you know.
Yeah.
And then at work, I reached out to, again, another amazing woman, and she's actually a CISO of a large corporation now, but she had been in this role previously. She had moved on, but she had been in the role. And I said, look, can we go to lunch? I really want to talk to you. I'd love any advice you have. And she did. And I took a notebook. So I was sitting there writing notes. And she gave me some great advice.
Right.
Which was, look, there's no playbook, if you will, for this role. So you need to do what is necessary to make yourself valued to the product line, right? You need to do anything you can. She said, you should ask to manage all of their IT costs, right? Typically, there's nobody really doing this, nobody managing it, reporting on it regularly. Take accountability for that. Tell them you'll take that on. You'll do your annual budgeting. I mean, another very challenging annual activity that typically is an afterthought for some of the product lines. Tell them you'll take that on.
Right.
Ask them. She said it's as simple as go in and talk to each one of the product lines. They had a global operations director. Go talk to the global operations director and ask them, what are your challenges? Is there anything I can do to get involved and help? So it was really that. So I've still taken that with me today. Like, a role is what you make it at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Right? Nobody gave me a playbook for CIO, but it's what I make of it.
I absolutely agree. But then where do the boundaries come in? Because ultimately you could always take on more and more stuff, right? And I guess people out there are always going to be open to give you more and more stuff. Makes their life easier. That's
true. And that's where the prioritization comes in, and thinking about, how am I going to deliver the most value for the organization? So if I think about, you're right, absolutely. If I ask, hey, what can I do? And their stuff will come at you from every angle, but looking at what is going to make the biggest impact and focusing on those things. And then again, leveraging the team. I mean, at this level now, it's great. I mean, I have a great team. So we are able to do quite a lot.
Right.
But again, I even have to say to them, because, it's your nature, right? You're going to do the things that are easy first.
Of course.
And the things that you like, right? And you're going to put the hard things or the things that you don't like kind of off to the side. But then you have to come back to think, okay, what is really going to add value? Like, is it real, like spending, an extra 2 hours on this thing, is that really going to add more value than, getting this other thing done over here?
Yeah. Yes. Deep work versus shallow work, right?
Yeah.
I have 2 blocked out times in my diary every week to do deep work. And the amount, actually, I've got better at it now. But when I first did this, most of the time I ended up just filling that time with shallow, easy stuff that wasn't really moving the needle, but just because it was easy. Right?
Yep.
And you look at the other thing and you're like, oh, right. Okay, what else can I do?
Right.
It's such a natural thing to do, though.
It is. Yeah, absolutely.
But how do you actually tackle that practically? How do you make yourself tackle the stuff that is going to deliver the most value?
I mean, it's just like you said, it's tough. What is that? There's an adage, eat the frog?
Yeah.
Like, you just got to do it. You just got to eat the frog. You just got to jump in and do it. And I do exactly what you do. I block off time on my calendar and I mean, sometimes things come up and you have to, but still you have to do it, right? So it's, okay, I'm going to block off 2 hours to get this done or make a start on this or get it to a point where I can hand it off to someone else to run with it. But the other thing is, again, going back to accountability, it's, I have a leadership team meeting. So my leadership team meets every 2 weeks. And, having obviously we have the projects that we have to get done, but we usually have, training, budgetary goals, development opportunities. And so saying, okay, well, we're going to talk about this at every meeting.
Yeah.
So having it there and having it on the agenda and saying, okay, we're going to talk about this, just that creates the accountability as well. Yeah. And it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing.
It's transparency, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's keeping everybody aligned, right?
Absolutely.
But it's again, it's one of those things. Once you've figured it out and you've got that cadence of conversations, it's obvious. But until you've got that going, it's not obvious at all, right?
Right.
And I remember spending so long scratching my head thinking, well, we've got these cadence of meetings and we know what we want to talk about, but we're not getting the right outcomes. And it's literally just making sure that you've got a track of the things that you want to get
absolutely.
done, right?
And are we moving the needle and just being honest? There are times, okay, well, we haven't moved the needle over here. Okay, why? Has another priority crept in? And that may be the case. Or, did we think the technology was farther along than it is? That may be the case.
Right.
But let's just be honest. And then do we just need to reprioritize this?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, cool. Just going back to your previous point, right? So the most challenging period in your career, there's three things that have happened there. You've obviously got the kids that are young, that need your support. You've stepped into a management role for the first time. That's a new skill. And you've stepped into a new role without the leadership there.
Yeah.
There's trust gone and you're stepping into a completely unknown world, right?
Yeah.
That is a lot to unpack.
So,
but look, I mean, obviously there's a theme in terms of how when I said to you, how did you deal with that? You said, well, reaching out, right?
Yeah, ask for help. Yeah.
Clearly a value of yours, I suppose. And where does that come from? That ability to go, well, I need more support here. Let me go and get it.
It's one of those things. I think it was my father told me, when I was younger and needed something. And, I think a lot of people are very, I don't know, they want to take it all. They don't want to admit they can't do it, whatever it is, whether it's, being super mom or, doing your, being the best at your job. But there's no shame in asking for help. I mean, that's the other, actually, this is the other thing I'm telling my daughter all the time. I'm like, talk to your cousin. She just started a job in private equity. She had your same major. She's someone you know well. Why would you be concerned about reaching out to her? Are you worried about what she's going to think of you? And I think that actually it comes down to that. You don't want people to think, oh, well, she can't handle it, especially in the workplace. You don't want anybody, if you're asking for help, you don't want people to think, oh, goodness, well, we made a mistake hiring this person. They're asking for help already, or they need it. And the thing is, people want to help. That's
right.
The other thing. So, and I take that to heart. When people reach out to me for help, whether it's, in the office, through mentoring programs, if it's, my daughter's friend who's asking for, advice on certain things, friends of, I've got, friends, kids who know where, know my career path. Of course, I'm happy to talk with them. Why would you not? Yeah. Right. And honestly, I learn things from these conversations.
Yeah, it's such an interesting point. I think so many people miss out on that, though, right? And I also think there are levels to it. So some people will ask for help when they're really in a difficult situation, but ultimately they probably should have reached out a lot earlier.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. You think back to your most challenging period of your career, and you are very open in saying the one thing that you did that enabled you to get through that really easily was actually reach out and get some help and get that support, right? And there's a lesson in that, isn't there?
Absolutely. 100%.
But
yeah.
Okay, cool. And then so coming back to being a mother, young children, stepping into a high pressure role, that's never an easy thing to do, right? It's a difficult situation to be in. Do you think the workplace now is easier for mothers with young families?
Everybody's lens is what they are having to deal with. So from that perspective, if you're a first-time mother, off on leave, and then you come back, you're going to be challenged regardless.
Right.
So I do know that we were talking about this earlier, my firm now, and many do, offer paternity leave. That was not a thing when I had my children. I had You either had 6 weeks or 8 weeks of leave. I made up 12 weeks by saving up my vacation and using that. So I made up 12 and I was back, into the office. Honestly, after my first, I was happy to go back into the office.
Yeah.
Because it was challenging. But no, I mean, just has gotten easier. I don't really think it's gotten easier. And again, a lot of it comes down to each individual's experience and what they're having to work through.
Yeah, I know for my wife that it was the most difficult period of her career as well, right? It's because I think alongside the practicalities of having a family independence, you've also got all the emotional stress of A, being out of your working environment, B, then missing out on, both the kind of the social and all of the learning that you get just from being there every day, right? And therefore you are naturally a step behind. And then C, there's also that you've now got dependence. So emotionally, you're in a slightly different place to potentially where you were before you had the kids, right?
Yeah.
It's challenging, isn't it?
It is. I will say this though. And maybe again my frame of reference. So I grew up with my mother working, and which at the time was very, very different. So she was a working mother back, this is in the 80s, early 80s. In our neighborhood, I think she was the only one, at least the only one that I knew of.
Wow.
And I didn't think anything different. Like I didn't, of course I didn't resent that she worked or anything. She honestly was a good role model. And so when I was in that situation and I was talking to people that I knew from work that, had kids around the same age, they were in this kind of crisis, like, oh my gosh, like I don't really want to go back to work and I feel so guilty, leaving my child. And of course that level of guilt never really occurred to me because it's like, I'm like, I turned out fine. My mom, my mom worked. So that didn't really resonate with me. But one of the things that I took to heart was, I'm actually the balance of being able to work. Again, when I had my first, I was an individual contributor, so I was not in a management role, right? So I didn't have quite the pressure. And I enjoyed going to work every day. I enjoyed having adult conversations. I enjoyed going for coffee.
Yeah.
And then I really looked forward to seeing my daughter every day. And I really made those experiences count. Like it was quality over quantity is what I used to say. Like, would it really matter if I'm taking her with me carting her to the grocery store, she's asleep or, what have you? No, she's perfectly fine and well taken care of. And I was very fortunate for that. But yeah, I just, I enjoyed, and I was fortunate to be able to have the balance and be able to, have good, affordable health care.
Of course.
Or child care for my daughter.
And do you think has your your own mother played a role in terms of being a role model for you in your own career and seeing the way that she went about doing things, even when potentially her peer group were not in full-time careers themselves?
It's so odd. I took that for granted when I was growing up. Like it just was what it was. But I will say this, I knew that my parents expected me. So both my parents have PhDs.
Right.
They both had gone on to, have these. So of course it was just growing up again. It was, the expectation was I was going to do the same. Right. Like it didn't even occur to me that, I'm going to stay home and I'm not going to have a career because that was not my lens. And so I hope that my daughter is seeing the same thing. Right. I mean, she can do whatever she wants to do. And you can be, that's the thing. I mean, you can be successful. And I'm not the only one. Certainly. There are plenty of women now who have done what I've done and more in terms of, I mean, Sheryl Sandberg. I mean, there's so many out there.
Of course. It's such an interesting topic of conversation for me personally as well. My daughter is 6 years old, and I realize, building a business is intense, and I have a high level of ambition, as do you, clearly, and that gives you a certain level of drive, and it makes you prioritize certain things. And I think remembering to be fully present and find that time to have real balance is sometimes that's a real challenge, right? And it comes down to ruthless prioritization again, and making sure that you put the right things that are going to deliver the right value in your diary at the right times.
No, that's absolutely right. Yes.
Easier said than done.
Yeah. But like you're saying, carving out the space in your diary to do the hard things at work, but also carving out and being mindful about, okay, I'm going to take this weekend with my kids, and I'm going to focus 100% on them, right?
My daughter said to me, and to be fair, it was a working day, but we were technically on holiday, so I was still very kind of actively working. And we were chatting away, but I wasn't really present in the conversation. And she said to me, "Do you love me or your phone more?" And I was like, oh, wow. That's a real moment where you're like, okay, right, I've got to put this thing down right now, and I've got to pay attention to what's going on ahead of me, right? It's the moments like that really do make you think.
Yeah.
But still, I think, you can do both. That's the key thing.
Absolutely.
You absolutely can do both. And there's tons of examples of that now. So now you're in the CIO role at NRF, right? So maybe if you can just spend a moment giving us a kind of a quick overview of what does that mean? What are you accountable for in that role?
Sure. So I'm accountable for all the IT operations day to day. I'm accountable for managing all of our software platforms, our infrastructure, network. That's just the table stakes. That's the bread and butter. You got to keep things running. And then the budgeting. So making sure that I am a good steward of our partnerships' money. So I'm getting the biggest bang for our buck in terms of weighing the benefits of all those great things out there versus what they're actually delivering. Mm-hmm. And then innovation. So delivering projects, new technology, right? There's the big thing out there is talking about Gen AI and its impact on the legal industry as a whole. And so, okay, what are the tools out there framing up those opportunities? And then we've talked about this, but data. I think many law firms historically, I guess from my lens versus, corporations, seem to run their systems in silos, which creates then data silos. And so the opportunity to leverage that data, there's a lot of work that's required to kind of pull that together, right? So you need to first break down the silos so that you can, leverage all of that data to its highest and best use. And so looking for those opportunities. So right now we're doing a finance transformation project, and we're redoing our kind of data pipeline and plumbing essentially in support of that. So modernizing all of that.
Mm. And have you seen, since you've been in the industry, have you seen a continuous drive towards technology from partners themselves?
Absolutely. I mean, it is mixed, right? There are certainly those that, have been, practicing law kind of in the same way for many years. Mm. And I do think it's kind of the next generation, the newer generation coming in. I'll tell you, this last set of associates that we just brought in, they're going to be the first class that's using generative AI tools from day one.
Right.
So it's very different.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Very exciting. And then you think about, okay, as that stuff starts to mature, what impact will it have on the revenue models and the whole way that the industry is set up today, right? But it comes down to, I guess, having good data and being able to access the data in the right way.
Absolutely.
Which is where a lot of investment is going into big enterprise transformation right now. And I guess that puts the CIO role into the spotlight more.
It does, absolutely. I think prior to me being in the role, for sure, I mean, I can tell just from the kind of the team that I inherited, and it's just very much, IT was thought of as a very back office type function, keep the lights on the servers, keep things blinking and working. And there just wasn't much thought about moving forward in technology, and AI has really changed that.
Mm. And so, if you look forward over the next 5 years, what is going to happen? What do you see playing out?
Well, we can come back in 5 years and see if I'm right, but I think there's going to be a lot of consolidation in the legal tech space.
Right.
My observation is you have a lot of, 4,000 plus kind of vendors. And a lot of them have been started by, really smart people who have a law degree, and they saw a challenge, and they've developed some really cool tech, innovative tech to solve that challenge, but they're having trouble scaling it, maturing it, making it so that it's enterprise ready to run in a big, sophisticated enterprise environment. We're seeing some of those challenges. And then there's also a lot of overlap in the portfolio.
For sure.
So it's very much, when you look at the space, we don't want to make too big a bet in any one area because we see how quickly the landscape is changing.
Right. That's really interesting, isn't it? 4,000 plus vendors. I mean, and I assume that's growing at a rate of knots.
I'm sure. Yeah. There is some, like I said, we're already seeing some consolidation. So you're seeing, like the Laterras of the world, buying up some of these things.
Of course.
But we're still seeing a lot of overlap in the portfolio.
Yeah. And look, I guess, if you think about your career as a whole now, and where you are today, it's really fascinating as you go through this conversation to really think about the skills that you've developed in your early years and how they've then led you into that leadership role, right? And then some of the challenges that you've tackled along the way. But one question that we always like to ask, and really to finish the conversation on this podcast, is if you think back to the start of your career, what do you wish you knew then that you know now?
I guess, just going back to that first year or two, when even into the second year, where I was kind of in flux. Like that whole first 1 or 2 years, instead of just sitting back and just taking the assignments and just from the beginning having that mindset that even if I don't love what I'm doing day one, I'm learning, I'm building my experience, I'm building my resume, and I can be successful. If I have the drive, I can be successful no matter what. If I had had that mindset from the beginning, because I did go through some turbulent times early on where I just thought, gosh, is this isn't what I thought it was? Is this what I want to be doing? And, where do I want to be going? And just to sit back and think, look, just enjoy this. Look for the parts of the job that you do enjoy. Because I do think there's, and I talk to recent grads, quite frequently. I'll have people reach out, and they get disillusioned, I think, with kind of the first role. Like, this is not what I thought it was going to be. Or they may have done an internship, for example. And typically when you do an internship, a lot of times the firm is very focused on giving you something meaty, and you plan all these outings for the interns, and it's this big, and then you start the job and there's kind of this letdown. Like, where were all those executives that I was meeting, on a weekly basis through the internship? And I just think you need to just focus on getting the experience.
So play 2 moves ahead a little bit. think forward and recognize that you've got to do the hard yards to get to the
absolutely.
outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And I think in today's world, that is such great advice, right? Because a lot of young people don't recognize that is the way you get there.
Yeah.
There's no shortcuts.
You think back to I remember in my first management role that we started talking about the millennials and how to manage millennials. And they would come in and, it's like, when can I be promoted? What is the path for promotion? And it was so, again, for me, it was so foreign. It's like, no, you just got here.
Yeah.
I never would have asked my first boss that question. But I think a lot of times, again, just when you're young, you're impatient, and a year when you're young sounds like so long,
right.
And you just can't even I would tell my daughter, well, just give it a year. Let's just, and a year. Oh my, but you think about over your lifetime, that's nothing.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And kind of if you're trying to get experience, that's the other thing. Like saying that you spent a year it's kind of the minimum to spend in a position before you should start looking. Because what else are you going to say? Well, I gave it 6 months and I was done. Like, no. Say you gave it a year, actually, ideally 18 months or 2 years.
Yeah.
And then say, I realize that's not for me, but I got 2 years of experience.
Right. Yeah, it's really interesting. Have you found that corporate organizations have evolved the way that they develop staff or lay out the career paths to meet the needs of millennials or the requirements of millennials?
It's interesting. I've sat through a couple of training classes where they talk about, managing across the generations so that you can. So I remember one of my first leadership courses was we had this whole section. We had reading about, okay, so now you're in your first managerial role, okay, and you could have people that, are baby boomers, your parents' generation, close to retirement. Yeah. This is what they value, and then on through, and just talking through, those different groups. And you have to. If you have to be having these conversations because the value system does change, and so if you hold on to that, post-COVID, think about it, right? Like that old school thinking of you have to be in the office to be delivering value. Yeah. If we had demanded that everybody go back, and some places did,
of course,
but you have to be okay with the attrition.
Yeah.
But it is kind of old school thinking to think, you have to be in the office to be delivering. Right.
And just generally, I think there is an element of people have a lot of choice nowadays.
Absolutely.
And if you look at the average tenure within most roles, it is shorter than perhaps it was 5 years ago, let alone 10 years ago.
Absolutely.
Right? So I do think there is an element of, whilst, yes, you have to do the hard yards to learn any skill and really become super successful at the maybe middle management layer or at the junior end of an organization, people have a lot of choice. So you also have to kind of be aware and cater to that, right?
No, absolutely.
It's a difficult balance to strike.
Yeah. And again, you can make decisions as a firm. You can say, okay, we want everybody back in the office 4 days a week or what, but you also have to realize, well, you may be losing some people. And if you're okay with that, that's fine. That's a choice you're making.
Yeah, absolutely. On that final point, I think, we've had a 3-day in the office rule since we came back from COVID, and it's been consistent Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. I find that helps to create a real culture and an environment because people know where they stand, right? And we're a smaller business, so it's easier to do. But I have seen other clients of ours follow a similar pattern, and I think just having that kind of certainty is always a good thing for people, whatever level they are in their career, right?
Yeah, it definitely is not a one-size-fits-all. You have, for example, the younger generation who, they're single, they're 1 or 2 years in, and they really crave that environment with their peers. They want to go to lunch. They want to do the happy hours.
For
and
sure.
so it's very challenging. And same thing, we have some young mothers. Well, they've planned childcare near the office. So for them, they also want to come in.
Yeah.
So, but then you've got people whose commutes are very long, and maybe they're working with peers across the coast or even globally, right? And it's so funny in technology, we spent years trying to make communication and collaboration across the globe seamless, right? So that you could work from home. And then to have this whole post-COVID thing where no, we got to, what can we use what technology do we have out there that will pull people back into the office?
Yeah, it's the whole thing in reverse.
Yeah, it's kind of funny.
Yeah, no, very good, very good. Well, look, it's been fantastic having you on today. Really enjoyed the conversation. So much to take away from this. I think understanding how you've progressed from a developer into the C-suite, into the CIO of one of the world's largest law firms, and the challenges that you've faced along the way and how you've tackled those challenges has been super insightful. So thanks again for joining us.
Thanks, Luke. It was a pleasure.